So we have this simple page, nothing more than a scripts and a body with a div and an h1, and we have this simple JavaScript that is fetching an image from the dog API. So the next step here, I guess, will be we're console logging here the data. But what we want to do is actually display an image. So let's create a function, const display image. I'm gonna send a URL. Maybe you didn't create a function. That's fine. If you did, like, if you wrote all that code in here, that's fine. I like to create functions for everything that can be its own chunk. So I'm going to create a function called display image, and this display image function will receive a URL for an image. It will create an image tag. It's going to set the source of that image tag to this URL, and then it's going to append the image to the main div. So first, let's grab the URL from. We saw that this is the response, what we're getting here in the console log. And in the response, we're interested in the data property. And in the data property, we're actually just interested in the message property. So I'm going to create maybe here image URL equal to response.data.message. And then I'm going to call my function display image URL. So here I just grab the message property in the data has the URL that I'm interested in. I'm just saving that to a variable called image URL, and I'm just calling my function display image with that image URL. Now the display image function, what it needs to do is let's create an image tag. I'm going to call it img equal document that create element img, then img.source. We want to set the source property of the image object to be equal to the URL, and lastly just append grab the main div with document. Actually, let me just copy it from here. I grab the main div and then append to the main div. We're going to append that img. No, let's call this dog img. My image element, I just called it dog img. So a very simple function that does only one thing, which is creating an image and setting the source. Create the image, search the source of the image, and then append the image to the main div. So if we did this correctly, now once it refreshes the page, we should get a dog photo. Yes, so we got a dog photo. Let's refresh the page again. We got another one, and so on. You might be seeing this warning. You can ignore it for now. It says that a cookie associated with a cross-site resource was set, and this is just because when you make the network request to the dog API to get this image, the dog API is giving you a cookie. Yes. You can ignore it for now. It's because the dog API is giving you a cookie. Yeah. And they give you a cookie mostly to track you. To keep track of how many requests you made and what time maybe. We don't know. Let's see. me see the cookies. Here, this is what the dog API gave you. If you go to the application tab, there is a section here under storage on the left that says cookies, and then the file that is like our current file, and then you can see here. This actually the dog API gave you 2 cookies, and who the heck knows for what. And these are the values, which is all like cryptic. But most of the time it's for, this GA is probably Google Analytics. They want to track how you're using you're using their API or something like that. So you could just ignore this error for now. Or this is not an error. This is a warning.
What if we're not able to display a picture because?
You should be able to display a picture despite this.
Not for the dog API.
Even if it's for something else, if it's this exact same warning, you should be able to see the picture or whatever, or the to-dos or whatever you're getting. Yeah. Cool. So everyone got the dog showing? Cool. So now, what we're going to do is, let's do the same, but to get a cat. And what we're going to be building is, we're going to be building an app where we show a dog and a cat, and you have to pick which one is the cutest, and save it to a list. Then let me see. So for the cat API, you have to like sign up. For the cat API, you have to sign up, but don't sign up. We're trying to run an API locally that you can make requests to and give you cat photos. Let's see. And yeah, got it. No, that's fine. So I'm gonna run the API here. Is it this one? Janesh, is it this one? Should I put the key here? Let's see. Cat API. I guess then I'm gonna put my API key here. No, I have it here. Let's see. Try to do, oh, I didn't realize. Try to do, go on your terminal. Wait, go on your terminal and try to do ping and this IP, ping 192.168. 0189. Make sure you're connected to Pursuit Fellows. Try to do this, and you should see something like this showing up. No. Yeah. Who's getting a timeout? No, that's most of you. So, okay, I guess, yeah. What I didn't want to do was so that you had to register, but let's try this. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna share the API key with you all. I'm gonna put it in here. Yeah, this is actually good because we learned a little bit about how to different ways to specify API keys. So copy that. Sorry, Janesh helped build an API that could talk to the cat API, and we could use it. But then I didn't think about some of you, for some reason that I still don't know why, cannot talk to my computer. Thank you. So, okay, so if we look at the documentation of how to use that API, here, so there is, in the documentation it has this endpoint. The documentation, you could just Google the cat API. There is one endpoint called /images. So cat API v1/images/search. And then it says you need to be authorized with something called an API key, XAPI key. You just use the API key emailed to you when you sign up. That's the one that I just shared with you. This is the name that we need to use, and we need to put that key in the headers of the request. Note that, for instance, for the dog API, we don't need an API key, right? But there are some others that you need authentication with, and we're gonna see how to use this API key. Or actually, let's try to make this request. Let's try to make this request without the API key and see what happens. So I'm gonna create a function. Actually, let me let you try this. So just like we did here with the, not this, where was I? Just like we did with the dog API, now make a network request to get a cat API, to get a cat picture. I'm gonna share the link with you. Ooh. So I just shared the URL with you. Try to get a photo from there, just the same way you did with the cat, with the dog API. So make a network request just like you did for the dog API, but now to this URL, to this endpoint. And see if you can put a cat photo on your page.
Maybe for knowing who can see it. They're probably still always alright. They can start walking. That's how they first was. They want to have shorter.
two images that show at a reasonable size in this table, one next to the other. How much time do we need? Cool, let's give it 3 minutes.
That's fine.
Cool. So raise your hand if you created a function called get or fetch cat image. Cool. That's great. Yes, we wanted to create that. Let's do in here. Let me close one of these. Going back here. So let's create a function. Or somebody would like to come up here and write a function. Yeah. You actually just write it. Yeah. Let me. This. And then walk us through. Oh, wait. Yeah, you good.
No, wait.
You can also copy it from.
Hmm? Yeah, I'll just write it.
Then you can call your function. Actually, you know, it's going to be so you will need to console this function for using code.
Yeah,
That's pretty light.
that's what I was gonna say that at the data, I only had 0 index.
Yeah, well, yeah. Where's the, oh, shit. Where's the, wait, where's the,
So he will talk to us about how your function works.
So basically, it uses this URL, and I think this URL it gives a random image every time you hit it, and then I put the whole thing in a what's this called again? A try catch. So it will catch an error if there's no internet, and basically I have a variable for the image URL, like the random one that it gets from the server, and like you key into it with response that data at index 0 because that's where the URL is going to be. And then I just use the same function for the display image because it'll work for both of them. And I just put in the image URL as the what is it again?
The argument.
Yeah, the argument, and then it displays here. I was gonna make a CSS, but it's like really big.
So how can we make it so that the two images are reasonable size?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in my CSS, I just put
You can do it.
oh wait.
Like create a. You can do command tab.
Oh, in the
Command N to create a new file,
and
and then start typing here some CSS.
oh, well, I just put this, and then yeah, that's it.
Cool. Yeah. Let's command S to save,
And
and then save it as .css.
uh,
Great.
save, and then
Then link it. Yep.
oh. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hugo. Cool. So now we have two images that when we load the page, they appear. That's cool. Cool. Seems that the cat is always appearing first before the dog. Is that because we have it here? Huh, even though we fetch first the dog image, and then we load the cat appears first. Why do you think that might be? For, oh. So it might be because of the cat API responds faster. So these two things are going on in parallel. Like if we see it here, it was gonna be like if we see it happening here. Wait, actually, we should get XHR. You see, like when I refresh here, they appear to happen exactly at the same time. They're actually being fired at almost the same time. Wait, what? The time? Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yes, thank you, Dante. So we can see here how long it took to reply to the dog, for instance. And wait, let's go back here. It took 102 milliseconds to get a response from the dog, but it took 78 milliseconds to get a response from the cat. Let's repeat that. Network. Yeah, the search is half as fast. Wait, half as fast or double as fast? I don't know, but we can see the difference. Right? Or the dog is just twice as slow. Right? This might be because how the developers wrote the code for the dog API. They may have some of n square programs running, or linear programs where maybe the search. No, it's more likely that this one is linear. Well, like we're just speculating here, but and then the random dog is taking some more time because maybe it's doing some extra work or maybe an inefficiency in their code. Maybe the dog API has more images, and it has to it takes longer. Cool. So yeah, you may have it changing from time to time. That's it. Cool. So okay. So here, this one is pretty cool. Cool. So did anyone need the API key?
No.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So I feel like I don't know why they don't specify that in the here. I think the developers of the CAT API, they want you to register to get an API key, but you don't have to. Or they might start limiting our requests in a little bit, because maybe they're keeping track of how many requests are being made, and then they might start to block Pursuit's IP. But then in that case, we just use the API key. Cool. So yeah, this is great. I really like that Hupo realized that the display image can work for both, because this is just creating an image. So I'm just gonna rename this from doc image back to just image, because it's no longer just a doc image. It's any image. You just give this function a URL, and it was gonna create an image for you. Cool. So questions so far here. Why do we have this index 0 here in the data? John? Yes, because the response data compared to the one coming from the dog API, this one is an array, and that array will have always one element, and that element that it has, actually we can look at it here. Let's go here, refresh, open the network tab. Let's go this one. We can see that this one is the CAT API. Let's look at the response. The response here, we can see that it's an array. Starts with square brackets, ends with square brackets, and this inside it has one object, curly brackets, and that object has breeds, ID, etc. We can look at it more easily here. You can see that it's an array. It has one index at index 0, and at that index we have an object with these 5 properties. From these properties, we're interested in the URL. So here is also to realize that not all APIs respond the same. For the CAT API, for the dog API, where did we find the URL? In the message property, right? In the message property of the data object. In here, we have to key into index 0 and in a property called URL. So not all APIs are the same. These two APIs are probably developed by completely different people. And they decide, and you will decide too, as you start to create your own APIs, how your API responds.
Do all APIs, the responses have a data?
No, that is just because of Axios. Yeah. We can see that in fetch, when we use in fetch, we don't have data. We don't have the data property. The response just on the second dot then becomes the data. Yeah. It's just, and that is just a standard that Axios decided to implement because they want to separate the response object, all the information about the response, like when it happened, at what endpoint, what headers they were, from the actual data. Yeah. Cool. So how would we go about clicking on one and picking it as our cutest? Let's change the header. Pick the cutest. Dogs versus cats. as suggested. Wait, why is this not working? Oh, thank you. Let me just copy this and change it here. This title, where does this title appear? The tab. H1. Cool. So now what I want is when I click on one, I want to pick it as the favorite, and two other animals should appear to pick again from them. So when I click on, well, maybe we should we have like buttons, one for the cat, one for the dog, or should we have it like on clicking the image? So buttons, raise your hand if you want buttons. Okay, and then let's do buttons. But if we think about it, like we could add event listeners to any elements, right? So we could listen for a click on anything. We could listen for a click on an image or a header. And this is, for instance, how Instagram works. Like you see that you could double tap to like a photo. Even in the web, I think you can double click. Let's see. Yeah, you see you can double click to like. That is because this image has a click event listener that it hears for one and then it's listening for actually two. It listens for one first and then it's expecting the other one. So we could do it like that, but let's do it simpler with some buttons. Cool. So let's add. If we add the buttons in the HTML, wow, these are cool. When we add the buttons in the HTML, if we add the buttons in the HTML, the buttons will appear before the images, which I don't think is a good user experience. Let's look at that. So let's imagine we have here button. Just do like dog. And then another one for the cat. Let's refresh. And it doesn't seem to, oh, look at that also. The cats are, the two buttons are before the images. Why is that?
Well, yeah, because it would just show the stuff on HTML first before the.
Right, because the stuff coming in from the network takes some time, and even though for us it's like almost imperceptible, the HTML will go faster. So I propose we have the main div. Since we started to have more elements, let's break it down a little bit more. Let's have like one div for the cat and one div for the dog. Then here we're going to show the image. So this will be this dog img. And we have another one for the cat img. And then we are going to have the button here. Let's just do dog. And another button here, cat. So that one, we have them like, the buttons exactly under the images, and then we can click, and we don't show the buttons unless we actually are showing a dog or a cat, right? So actually, let me give you some time to think about that and try to implement it. How could we create this structure? And these are just like, this is a div, the image is inside, and then a button inside. How can we create this using the code that we have, and how do we need to modify our code to create something like this? Yes, Joanne. Yeah. So yeah, let's take some time to let's take 10 minutes to think and try to have our HTML. So currently what we have is this. What we have is the main div and 2 images. This is currently what we have, but we want something like this. So start to modify your JavaScript and HTML. Actually, you shouldn't need to change anything in your HTML. Talk to your neighbors. Discuss how we could accomplish something like this as we load the dog image and the cat image. Also, the div for the dog should be red. The border should have a red border, and the one for the cat should have a blue border.
Question.
Uh-huh.
So is there a way to access the name of the variable input?
Oh, what do you mean?
Like, for example, this one's cat URL, this one's dog URL.
Uh-huh.
If I put it in, let's say this function,
Yeah.
can I get the name of it instead of the actual value?
Oh, I see. No, you can't really get the name of the variable. What you can do is then pass a callback to this function.
Back?
Yeah. So actually, tell me more about what you want to do. Why do you want to do that?
I wanted to give display image.
Sort of like, what image do you want to display? A cat or a dog, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
because like the thing is, I have it here. Right? I created a function that takes in endpoint, so I could just call one function instead of
oh, I see.
make two.
I see now. Mm-hmm.
And so
Wait, what's this? Oh, this is this is to key into, right?
Yeah, so then I do for each and reassign it, image URL, because image URL, and
That's
it just
cool.
keeps adding.
You can get rid of the data and just hardcode the data here.
Right? Yeah. I was gonna do that.
Yeah, I get rid of it here. Wait, but then how do you do image URL?
I reassign
And
the value.
oh, I see. that's cool.
The way I want to like let's say I was doing an API across like several different
Mm-hmm.
things. It'd be easier to have it just in one
Yeah.
function.
Yeah. So you know what? So in this case, then just do. Well, there's a few ways. So you could just add another argument here. So like what image type,
Image type.
and then something like that. Or Actually, I think that will be better. The other option will be to grab it from here, from the URL. The URLs are different,
Oh.
and then be able to tell with the URL. You know, if the URL contains dog in it,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
something like that. That's another option.
All right, cool.
Yep.
And then I'd use like query selector and then use the attribute dog,
Yeah.
like the universal.
Yeah.
That's me, where we can. Dog did.
Like have it like this, and then like depending on what I could create.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
That's fine.
okay.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So should we allow some more minutes, or should we jump into it?
Are you supposed to add functionality?
No, that's fine. So in your HTML, did you accomplish a structure like this once you get the two dogs, the two photos? Okay, how close are you? Okay, so let's do 5 more minutes.
Isn't that great?
I just went to that scene.
That's so funny.
I had lost a bunch of time on things. I didn't realize it unfinished function causing it to like stop those pictures. It was like, I thought I had done something wrong with it.
I broke it. That's it.
Cool. So once you inspect after getting the two images, once you inspect your HTML, should have something like this. Well, one for the dog and another one of this, one for the dog and another one for the cat, right? Which is basically, this is the HTML expressing something like this. This div that inside has an image and a button, right? So what were some of the approaches you took for doing that? Actually, raise your hand if you were able to get your two images like that, an image, and then underneath a button. One for the dog and one for the cat. Cool. Suzette, will you mind sharing with us what you did to do that?
I created another. Well, you have one made this, but I put the two images initially in different divs.
Oh, so you have two divs here, one for the cat and one for the dog, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
So then I pushed the dog image in the dog div and the cat image in the cat div. Same thing with the button.
I see. So Suzette created here dog div. One for the cat div and one for the dog div. Okay, that's fair. Cool, let's run with this, yeah. So then how do I need to change my JavaScript to put the cat div in its place and the dog in its place? Malik?
I was gonna say, I did the same thing.
Uh-huh.
Lots of different divs, and then all I did was add parameters to the display image function called species.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way. Which way do you do it, Suzanne? Okay, that's fine. So actually, yeah, I really like Malik's idea, which is what he did was to the display image, he passes a second argument here called species. And then this species will be, I guess, one of dog or cat, right? And then he uses that to append it. So I'm gonna do like here, if species, because we only have two, let's do it. If species equals to cat, then instead of appending to the main div now, we want to append to the cat div. So I'm gonna do maybe this, move it here. I'm gonna do cat div, but instead of grabbing the main div, now I want to grab the cat div. So I'm gonna do cat div or cat container. You could have called it anything you want. And then instead of appending to the main div, I'm gonna append to the cat div. Else, then that means if the species is not cat, then we want to do this same thing, but with the dog. So let's grab here the dog div, dog. Is this making sense so far? Cool. So now once we call the display image here, then if we're fetching a dog, then let's pass in here dog. This dog argument is going to be our species. And if we're fetching a cat, the function that was here, display image, passing cat. So the display image now has two arguments, the image URL, and the second argument is the species, to differentiate what animal we want to show and where to put it. So when we're fetching dog, we call display image, we pass in the URL, and we pass in the second argument species as dog. Then in their display image function, we have the if species is equal to cat, then let's add it to the cat. Otherwise, let's add it to the dog div. This is a good start. Questions or comments regarding this? Should we try it out? Let's see what we have in here. Refresh. Refreshing. Now let's inspect our HTML here. Main cat div. Cool, we have the image inside of the cat div. Dog div, we have the image of the dog inside of the div. Cool. Was everyone able to put the cat and the dog in its own divs? Thumbs up if you were able to do that. Cool, okay, I think that's most. So now, not only we want to put the image, we want to also put some buttons. So how should we go about that? How should we go about adding some buttons? Oh, also this is, well, I want to actually show them side by side. Why are they not showing side by side even though we have more space? Douglas?
Because I forget what the default.
Mm-hmm.
It's a default CSS that stacks it.
The default CSS, yeah. That is because divs, the cat div, you see it's occupying all the space. That's because by default, divs are a display block. They will create a line break before it and after, and they occupy all the available width. Let me change that. Then I'm going to do with CSS. Let's target the cat div as well as the dog div. Let's do display inline block. So this will hopefully have them showing side by side. Cool. We could have also used like grid on the main container. That would have also worked.
Can you float each div too? Because that's how I used it.
That's fine too. Yeah, you could float each div. Yeah. You did Flexbox, and it works. It shows them side by side. Cool. Yeah, those. See, there are multiple ways. So, Brianna used floats. Suzette used Flexbox. I use display inline block. I also suggested display grid. And those are all ways to have them side by side. Now, how should we go about the buttons? One for the cat and one for the dog. Ideas about that? Yes, Douglas?
I made a function to create buttons.
Okay.
In hindsight, I probably could have done it in a single function and made a qualifier like add a dog to, but I made just in haste a create dog button and cat button
I see.
function
Mm-hmm.
that first defines a created new element. Cat button, for example, document.create elements
Uh-huh.
button.
But when do you call these functions?
First is create cat button, so it's and
Okay.
then create dog button. So I could probably just truncate it to create button
Mm-hmm.
as a function, just so I can call it after I've loaded a dog, so or a cat. So
That's correct. But where are you calling the function like create cat button?
So create cat. So it happens right after I append the image
I see.
into the main div.
Something like here. Here you'll do like
Yeah.
create dog button.
Exactly.
If this was the dog button, right? You display the image first and then you create the button.
Right.
And the button will be appended to the same div, to the dog div.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's why I kept it separate.
That's fine. This is a way we could have a function called create dog button that creates those buttons. Actually, let's do it this way. I'm gonna create those functions down here. Create dog button. What this is going to do is we're going to create a button. Let button equal document that create element button. Then do button dot inner text. I'm gonna say dog is the cutest. And then what we want to do is append this button to the dog div. So I'm gonna grab the dog div again. Let dog div equal document query selector dog div, and then we do button dot dog div dot append child, or append, doesn't really matter. Button. Yes.
Is it better practice to assign it to a variable rather than just simply go document.query selector dog div dot append child button?
If it makes your code more readable to have a variable, you should create a variable. Yeah, that'll be up to you. I like to always create a variables. Yeah. You could just do what you just described. Document that query selector and then append child immediately. Cool. So let's do it this way. Now I think we should have our button for our dog. Let's refresh. Cool. Now we have our button for the dog. It's not right where we actually want it, but let's think about that later. But questions are: was everyone able to have a button for the dog? So here I have this function, creates a button, very simple function. And then I just immediately call it after I display the image. Cool. So let's think about how do we get the button under here directly? What are some ways for that? CSS.
I flexed it, but
You flexed?
it make the button the size of the
Oh, I see. I mean, that could be an option. You mean the button is like from here to here? I see. Other options, Michael?
Flex column.
Flex size column. That's a good one. Any others? Yes.
I originally did grid for the entire thing.
Grid.
So it was so they kind of automatically had appended just below them.
I see.
And then within each div, I justified center so that we've got things kind of lined up in there.
Got it. Yeah, that's another way. I think so. Here we're starting to think about like this thing, this div that has two things inside, right? When you have something like this that's starting to be more complex, what I recommend is you name that thing. Here, for instance, I'll name this something like animal card, and an animal card has an image and a button. Right. So, and then once we have actually, we just have the dog div and the cat div. So actually, let's put the borders on them. I'm going to index cat div border. Let's do 1 pixel solid. We said that the cat will be blue. And then for the dog, I'm just gonna do the same. Oops. Dog. But this one instead, just red. Let's see what we have. Refresh. Cool. So we have our two divs. Now what we want is we want to put this button underneath the image. From the options that were suggested, let's do flex. So for the cat div, I want both to be flex. So actually I'm gonna change this inline block from here to flex. Let's just see what this gives us. Refresh. And this is similar, I guess, to what Suzette was describing, which is it made the button the same height. We could do flex direction column to make it like this. This is what you have, right?
But I made the div the size of the picture.
You made the div the size of the picture.
So like, I don't know why.
Let's do this 2 pixels. Borders are greater. Is it because you have in the image, you have like the...
I have the image at the bottom, so that'll be the size of the div.
You're saying the button displays up here for the dog, and then the image after?
No, you see I have in your CSS, the image is the first thing.
Uh-huh.
I made it the last.
Okay, but I think that shouldn't affect much. Let's see. If we want to do that, we could just have... Wait, let's see. Expand this. So yeah, currently here even though we have flex direction, we'll just need to make... We have flex direction, but our divs... These divs are still occupying the entire width. Yes.
Do flex wrap
Flex wrap.
or you do flex flow.
Let's do flex flow.
And then you do wrap column,
Wrap.
space column. You can get rid of the one on top.
Oh, for this one. No, we still got the same.
No, I did it
In the main div.
in the bigger div. That's how I
So let's do... Let's have this flex direction column on both divs. so that the dog button appears underneath, and then let's do something for the main div. So let's do main. What ID did I give it? HTML, just main. Main. Let's do that. Display flex. Now we have them the way we want. Cool. So now let's just leave the buttons the same size. Let's actually get to favorite one or to pick one over the two. So cool. Did everyone see then how we did this button here? Create that button. Now, but does everyone have like the button for the cat? Okay, cool. So let's do that here real quick. Here we can think about how we're repeating ourselves here. Basically, this create button and this create cat button are going to be the same. It's just that they're being appended to different things. This one is going to say cat is the cutest, and it's going to append to the cat div instead of the dog div. So nothing much changes. We could have similar to what we had with this display image here that we're passing in a species. We could also do the same for the create buttons functions. We could pass in like a species, what kind of button do we want to create? And depending on that, we append to a different element and we change the text of the button. So let's do actually I want to do that. Let's have a function that will create button. Just have one function that is create button is gonna take in a species. And then it's going to create the button. And then if the species is equal to cat, then set the inner text, if it's equal to dog, let's set the inner text to be the dog is the cutest. Yes, we could also do string interpolate, and then I will need to uppercase the D. Yeah, that's an option. I just don't want to do that. Else, do something else. Here, if it's a dog, what I want to do is grab the dog image, grab the dog div, and append the button to that. Else, I want to do the same thing, but now with cat. Cat div, cat div. So the create buttons will take in a species. If it's a dog, it will create a button for the dog with the dog with a message saying dog is the cutest. Otherwise, it's going to create a button for the cat and append it accordingly. So let's just then have here, let's go back to where we were, create dog button. And I'm passing dog. And then on the for the cat, which is load cat, create, actually this is no longer create dog button. Let's change that here. Create button, one for the dog, one for the cat. Now, because we reuse the function, we have the buttons in here. One for the cat, one for the dog. Cool. Everyone has two buttons. Cool. Now let's think about what do we want to happen when you click on one of these buttons? What do we want to happen when you click on one. This is us designing this app. We can have anything we want to happen. Any ideas? Douglas?
We could build a counter at the bottom that updates with each click and click upwards to let us know how many times the cat has been chosen over the dog.
That's a good idea. Raise your hand if you want to do that. Yeah, a counter to see like how many times you have selected a cat as the cutest versus how many times you have selected a dog as the cutest. Cool. So cool. So let's do. Should the count like appear at the top? Where should the count appear? Let's have the count at the bottom, since you are undecisive. So, how do we handle the count? Well, we first want to handle the buttons before we even think about the count. Let's have some event listeners on these buttons. Cool. So whenever we create the buttons, let's also add the event listeners. So I'm gonna have a function before I'm gonna have a function called pick cat. So what I want to do is when I click on here, let's do this. Console log cat was picked. So I have these two functions, pick cat and pick dog. Have these two functions and have them fire on click in the buttons. Let's give like 7 minutes to do that. What I want to do is when I click the cat is the cutest, I want to see this message popping on the console. Have this function pick cat as the event listener for the cat button, and have the pick dog function as the event listener for the dog button. Let's take 5 minutes to do that. Yes. CSS. How do we get these two functions firing when the user clicks either button? No.
Yeah, that's how I usually do it.
It's showing like one at the top, one at the bottom.
Do you set the main to flex?
Yeah.
Um, do you have it linked? Do you have the CSS linked to your?
Yeah, it's showing.
Okay.
Is it because like the name?
Oh, that's. Wait, so you created the cat and div? You created them with JavaScript?
Oh yeah, yeah, I have it here.
Maybe you didn't give them a class.
Uh,
Did you give them a class? Because you know. Oh no, not a class, an ID. Oh, I see.
yeah.
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 So you just gave them the ID dog and cat. So it's in the index CSS.
Oh, it's not the hashtag.
Oh, it is the hashtag.
Or would it just be regular?
No, it will be just hashtag. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, let's go to your browser. Refresh and inspect. Oh. And then go to the elements. Inspect here. Click on one of those. Click on the dog, like on the there. Border. Do you have? Wait, show me your CSS is identical to mine, right?
Oh, does this also need a hashtag?
Oh yeah, that's why.
Okay.
You got it.
Oh, okay. Whoops.
Cool. So raise your hand if you were able to have the event listeners put in the buttons. Okay, only a few. What was the issue? What was it? Why is it hard? It is hard. Well, what do you think is what is the difficult part? What is? I wish I could read your minds. But unfortunately I can't. So what is the hard thing about putting, firing this function when the user clicks the button? What is like the hardest part, or what is confusing about that? Yes. Mm-hmm. So, okay, yeah, that's a perfect source of confusion. The fact that I have only one function for creating a button, but yet I'm able to create two buttons. And I'm calling it twice. That is a perfectly plausible source of confusion. Yeah. Yeah. Let's also think about like, when do you want to add the event listener to the button? The minute you create the button, add the event listener to it. Say that again? Yes, we discussed about that, yeah, but we went with the button. You mean like add the event listener to the button or to the div, and then when you click the button, because event event bubbling, it will fire, right? So here, let's just do, where do we have the button? The button is not in the DOM, so we cannot grab it from there. We'll need to wait until the network request is done and the buttons appear, but we don't want to do that. Just as soon as the button is created, let's add an event listener. So here, this function, create button, is creating a button for the dog, if that is the species, and a button for the cat, if that is the species. So in here, let's just have something like, if it's cat, no, if it's dog, let's do button, let's do this at the top, here. Button that add event listener. Even before we put it in DOM, we could add an event listener. Listen for the click event and fire the pick dog function. And let's repeat that for the cat, pick cat function. Some of you might be seeing a lot of repetition, and if you want to get rid of it, you are encouraged to get rid of the repetition. I'm not going to get rid of it because it might be confusing, but if you see the repetition, want to get rid of it, go ahead. Cool, so I have, depending on what species I have, when I'm creating the buttons, I append 2 different event listeners. If it's a cat, I append the pick cat. If it's a dog, I append the pick dog function for the click event on the button. So let's see if this works. We close the CSS, go here, and then open the inspector. Click on the cat is the cutest. Oh no, it doesn't work. Maybe I forgot to refresh. I forgot to refresh. Cool. So we have our functions firing at the correct moment and whenever we want. Questions or comments regarding the adding of the event listener? Now, what do we want to do once the user clicks the button? If our goal is to have some counters. What we want to do is then update some counters. So I'm going to create some global variables here. I'm going to create let cat counter start at 0, let dog counter start at 0. Then, whenever we call the pick cat, what we want to do is we want to do basically cat count equal to cat count plus 1. And then same for the dog. But instead, we increase the dog count. Dog count. We're going to need to do something else to display them. But let's see if the counters are working. So, refresh here. Any global variable you define in your JavaScript that is linked to an HTML, any global variables will be available to you in the console. So here I could do like cat counter, counter. I see that the cat counter is 0. The dog counter, same thing. I'm gonna click the cat is the cutest, and I have cat count is not defined. Why is that? What are the type of errors that I have spent hours, I have wasted hours of my time in? Nope. Spelling mistakes, and you will waste hours on spelling mistakes. So let's hit cat counter 0. Let's click on this. Let's look at what cat counter is now. Now it's 1. We could also just do, instead of cat, this console log here, cat counter. Cat counter. Same for the dog. Dog counter. So whenever I click, I have cat counter 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is gonna keep going as now it's gonna keep going. So now we have 2 variables that increase as we click these buttons. Cool, so that's something. Now let's have those in the DOM. For doing that, how could we do that? How could we have the counters display in the DOM and update?
Can we create element in those functions?
Yeah, we could create an element in these functions. Like, let's do that. So let's do like cat counter p. And let cat counter p equal document that create element p. So create the cat counter p, and then just update. Actually, we want this to be the first thing that happens. Let's increase the counter first, then create a cat counter p, and then let's do cat counter p dot inner text equal to the cat counter, and then append the cat counter to the cat div. I'm going to do it with this. I grab the cat div, and then I want to append the cat counter p. So now our pick cat function is growing. We update the counter, then we create a p tag. We add that counter as the inner text of that p tag. Then we grab the cat div and append the counter p tag to the div. Raise your hand if you foresee a problem with this approach. Cool. Let's verify it. One, nice. So for each one that we click, each time that we click that, we are creating a new element. How could we get rid of that? Michael?
Instead of appending the cat counter, just grab it and then
Like update it, right?
yeah.
Instead of creating this, somehow update.
I guess by default we can set it to 0.
Yeah, so you mean, so you see now we have this card that has an image and a button, and it's gonna have a counter too. So now we have some other areas here for the counter. It should start at 0. right? So this thing that we started very simply with just one image is growing. So our restructuring that we could do, but we don't have time to, is let's have something like, instead of creating like display image and then create button, we could have some functions, something like create animal card, and then that function will take care of handling the image, of displaying the image, creating button, and also having a counter or starting a counter. In fact, let's see. Could we have a function create card, create animal card? Yeah. Yes.
What will happen if you create the element outside and globally,
Mm-hmm.
and then as whenever the function gets called, we'll just replace the index with the new number?
Yes, but then at what time do I append the element to the card? That will be.
You append it at the.
I should append it at the. But we should just have a function here, something like initialize counter, or display counter. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Create buttons. Let's have a function here called create counter. Say that again? Oh, that's another option. Yeah, we could also use replace. Yeah, let's do that. Let's use replace here. Instead of updating, as we have said before, let's literally replace the p tag element. So we can check here. Oh, let's do this. So let's give the cat counter p an ID. Cat counter. Now what this function could do is this function is going to attempt to grab it from the DOM. On the first time, it's not going to find it because there is nothing there. So let's do if not cat counter, meaning if you couldn't find the cat counter, what we want to do is set the inner text and append. Let's do this. If it couldn't find the cat counter p because it was not there, let's set the inner text and append it. Otherwise, let's replace it. For that, we will need. So we need the main div. Let's take this one outside. So first we grab the main div or the cat div. Then we create a p tag element. What we're going to do is, if the p tag element is not there, let's just set the inner text and append it. Otherwise, do replace. So let's do. Replacing will require the thing that we want to remove and the new thing. This here, cat enter p.id cat counter. Say that again. Oh, here. So let's do here, let all cat counter. Yeah, let's do this. All cat counter. This is gonna try to grab it from the DOM by doing cat counter. The all cat counter, this is becoming complicated because we should be doing this in a separate function. The pick cat is starting to do a lot of things, and when a function starts to do a lot of things, what we're experiencing comes in. So let's do all cat counter. This is going to try to grab the counter from the DOM. The first time that you click the button, that's not going to be the case because there's nothing there. Then we say if not all cat counter. Let's give this an ID here. Cat counter. If not all cat counter, let's do cat counter P, which is the new one. Let's call this like new cat counter. New cat counter. Cat counter. New cat counter, please. Let's do that. Otherwise, let's replace with cat div dot replace child new cat div new cat counter p all cat counter p. Let's get rid of this. So here we grab the cat div, we try to grab an all counter. If we have an all counter, we create a new counter div, p tag. We assign the, this is the new cat counter, an ID of cat counter. Then we check if we don't have an all cat counter, let's just add the text and set the, actually this we want to do regardless. Let's set the inner text to have the counter and replace child. Let's see what we have now. Now we have it correctly updated. Because every time after the first one, on this first one, we don't have a cat counter. But when I say click, so if we don't have a cat counter, we're gonna fall in here. We're gonna create, well, one was already created. We're just gonna set the inner text and append child. Now, once we have one cat counter, now this is not gonna be true anymore. We're gonna go on the else, and then what this is gonna do is we created a new cat counter here. We just set the new cat counter inner text to be the current cat counter, and we just replace the replace the all cat counter with the new cat counter, and then that gives us this effect, which is adding. Cool. So let's go for lunch, and then after that, let's just finish this and do some SQL.